everyone, welcome back to TV Guys. So last week, I just want to let you know, I screwed up. I completely messed up with the trivia question, and no one called me on it, but as soon as we were done recording, I was just like, yeah, I messed up. And Brian's inching in on our camera.
What is up? It's Santa Claus.
So a little bit of context here. We're doing a Zoom conference here, so that's how we record. I can see him. He started off camera, which is why we didn't start with the I'm Matt, I'm Brian thing.
Yes.
And then he starts slowly inching around the corner wearing a full Santa suit.
Pretty much. I thought that would be a good gag for our audio podcast.
Oh, it's like the joke at the end of Hot Rod where the Chris Parnell is like, "Wow, that was really something for our audio listeners out there. Too bad you couldn't see it." Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. Well, no, I figured we were decorating our Christmas tree earlier today, and I got Matt's Christmas card today, so I might as well dress up as Santa Claus for the occasion.
Might as well, if you're gonna go all out.
Yeah.
So anyway, last week, as I was saying, I screwed up on the trivia question because I forgot to check ahead of time. I had to come up with it in it, and I'm like, I think this is trivia, and I went back to like those trivia nuggets that are buried in your mind, but I fell victim to the Mandela effect, and the trivia that I thought I knew was not actually correct. So my thing was, which two actors from Parks and Rec and Stranger Things are related? And my answer was going to be Ben Schwartz, who plays John Ralphio, and all of a sudden I forgot his name, but the guy who plays Bobby in Stranger Things, the bully guy, and I should look that up real quick. They are not actually related. As much as they may look it, as much as they both have like that Italian demeanor and like the poofy hair, they are not actually related.
Just their facial features, like they could easily be related.
Yeah, seriously, they look like brothers. They're not. So we're going to give you two trivia at the end of this to make up for the jipping that we've done.
Yeah. Also, on the subject of trivia, we have had our first correct trivia answered. My friend Mike texted me with the answer to our first episode's trivia, which was that Mike Schur played Mose. So Congratulations to Mike. Hope you're still listening.
He only knows that because of Mike and Mike. You know, someone, he's padding the deck there. So we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have two trivia questions at the end. And they're both probably going to be Office related. At least mine is. I haven't heard what yours is, Brian.
Yeah, it'll be Office related.
Of course. And this whole episode is going to be Office related. So, we know you guys. We know how you are. You had Netflix for 3 years, and 90% of your playtime was The Office. 10% was Friends, and then 0% was anything else. So I know how you guys are. You watch the same show over and over and over, and if you're like us, you have The Office pretty much memorized. So there are a lot of moments to take from The Office, but we're going to talk about the top 3.
And if you're listening to this soon enough, by the end of 2020, you can still listen or watch the episodes of The Office that we're talking about on Netflix. After that, if you're like me and have all the DVDs, you're still set. Otherwise, not sure.
I think they're going to Peacock and maybe HBO Max, which would be a confusing thing of why HBO Max. Maybe I just have that in my head because today they make this big announcement that all the Warner Brothers, all of their movies are going to go on HBO Max, like same day as being in the theaters. So like Wonder Woman is going to kick it off. That's more for our movie podcast. That's movie news, but that's just baffling.
Yeah. That's why I'm glad I hoarded DVDs. I mean, it might be old school, but at least they're not going to just go off every now and then.
Yeah, exactly. We've got all the seasons of. So I've got 3 shows I got all the seasons of. One of them is The Office. One of them is Friends. And one of them is Smallville. One of those is not like the others.
Let's see. For the whole series of TV, only 3? I've got
only 3.
The Office, Friends, and a ton of other ones. That could be a whole podcast of what series does Brian have all of them of. I even have all of Fraggle Rock from the 80s.
Oh my gosh. See, guys, I told you, I am clearly outmatched in the Battle of Wits here. So maybe I can have a better top 3 of Office moments than Brian has. I went 2 funny ones and 1 like more emotional or serious one. I don't know how yours ended up shaking up, Brian.
Mine were the same, and I do have an alternate that I can talk about if you end up stealing one of mine. But I do have to do a disclaimer. So there's a few episodes that I couldn't pick moments from because the episode are so good. I would just be talking about the entire episode. I want to do moments, not full episodes. So I had to disqualify the Dundies, Dinner Party, Benihana Christmas, and Threat Level Midnight because those 4 episodes, if I'm talking about the episodes, I'm talking about the entire thing.
That's true. Threat Level Midnight is definitely that is an episode, man. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, well, it's so well done, and it's so like they did something that's like an engaging movie to watch, but it's classic cheesy Michael. They nailed all the elements that they had going into it. That's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the episode's fine too, but also if you watch the bonus features and just watch the full unedited video of it, without cutting back to them watching it, it's even better.
Why don't you go ahead and start us off with what's your number 3?
All right, so my number 3, I actually remember right where I was when I saw this for the first time, and I don't know, you may have been there with me, Matt. It was after the Super Bowl at Wilbur's house, our friend Wilbur. Do you know what episode I'm talking about just by saying that?
Oh, yes, and that's on mine, so I'm going to have to come up with another one.
Yeah, it's the opening to the episode Stress Relief, which was Dwight's fire drill.
Yep.
And just everything. Like, they're banking on new listeners coming from the Super Bowl, so they knew they had to do something funny. So I just rewatched this last night, and it's just funny to see. So the context of it is Dwight starts a small fire and gets the whole office convinced and panicked that they are in a burning building trapped. You know, good office politics there. And it's just interesting to see. I made a note of some people's reactions. You know, Angela obviously has a cat hidden in the office and tries to save it. Oscar is normally one of the more rational characters, tries to climb in the ceiling. That seems more like a Dwight move if Dwight wasn't the one orchestrating it, I think.
Yep.
Kevin kind of pulls a Hitchcock and Scully move and just breaks down the vending machines to get all the food. Michael just tries to break a window through all of this. So this wasn't that long ago. This wasn't like in the 70s or something. You know who the only person you ever see with a cell phone in that scene is? Do you know this, Matt?
Andy?
No, Phyllis.
That's right. I knew it was one in that cluster. Someone in that cluster had it.
No one thinks to call the police. And you know what? I don't even think Phyllis is calling the police. Phyllis is calling Bob Vance.
Yeah, you better believe she is.
So, like, not even the rational ones, not even like Oscar or Jim or Toby, they don't call the police to say, hey, we're trapped. They're still running around all like crazy. And it gets to the point where even Jim and Andy start to use the copier as a barricade. Like, they're just destroying the office completely.
Yep.
And I know that cameras aren't supposed to intervene, but they know what's happening. They saw Dwight talk about that this is fake, and they're just letting this all happen. At what point do you stop letting the chaos happen?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's indicative of how real documentaries are. Is like documentary people and people taking photographs. They're like, I can't get involved. I can't become the story. I've got to document the story. And this is quite a story. But I mean, you can easily take some of the things you said as critiques and knocks on like some of the people in that, some of the more rational ones.
Yeah.
But I actually think it's really smart because it shows how high adrenaline and mob mentality can create panicky, crazed people, even out of the most sane and normal people that there are. Even Jim and Pam, like, you know, both of them, Jim was like, well, I'm not dying here. But like, you could see like his fear. And it's just like from then on, sure, he wasn't as crazy as some of the others, but you're right. He's using the copier as a battering ram. Yeah. They were not acting sanely.
And then Andy goes and says, like, the fire is shooting at us. Like, even for Andy, like, really?
That's a great line. And that must have been so much fun to film and write.
Definitely.
Like, let's take all of these characters and let's crank them up to their most absurd. What do they do at their most absurd if their lives depend on it? And I think they nailed it.
Oh, definitely. Do you look? There's also another little hidden moment. So, Oscar jumps up into the ceiling, and then later on, he starts to fall down. Do you see the look on Creed's face when Oscar falls down?
Yeah. I just like that. That was the scariest I've ever seen Creed. Creed makes everyone else scared and nervous, but that time he's just like, yeah.
I don't mean them as like critiques, but like it's just funny to see like even the most sane people just go crazy in this scene.
Yep. The funny story for me about how I first watched this is I was in Mardi Gras over the Super Bowl. We did a missions trip down there. And while I was down there, I got these polyidal cysts. So what those are these little like bumps that are almost like hemorrhoids or something at the very bottom of your tailbone. So pretty much in your butt. You've got these painful cysts that hurt to move. And this, I know, is way too much information, but you're welcome. So anyway, I was living with that. I had a like 18-hour bus drive from Mardi Gras all the way back up to Minneapolis with these cysts in unbearable pain. And the whole time I'm like, I need to go to a doctor. I need to do something because I've got to get. And the first thing we did, I looked up like an urgent care center, and it led me to a old folks home. And we go in there, and I'm like, this doesn't look like a hospital. And they're like, no, this is for senior citizens. I'm like, well, you can't help me then. So then I go and we go find another emergency room. We get in there, and while we're waiting in the waiting room, this was one of the episodes that we had missed while we were on the missions trip. So we're starting to watch this episode, and we are just going nuts. We are laughing our heads off during this in the middle of a waiting room with one headphone in each ear. And so that was my introduction to this episode, and it helped to take my mind off of my terrible, terrible experience for just a little bit.
I don't even know what to say to that.
I don't think there's anything to say to that, except for let's go on to my number 3.
Wait, before you go on, there's
Okay.
one more thing about this one. Do you know what was special about this episode that stupidly Netflix has removed?
What?
In the opening credits, originally. Normally the opening credits you see Michael, Jim, Pam, Dwight, Ryan, and then in the later ones Andy. And everyone else is just listed, their names are listed when the show starts.
Uh-huh.
In that episode, the original airing, they actually had an extended theme song where they listed and showed like Angela and Kevin and Stanley, and the whole cast was listed in the opening credits with the theme song. And I thought that was really cool. And I was doing a watch through of The Office earlier this year, and I got to that episode and I was excited to see it. But Netflix took that off. Netflix has it just back to the regular old. You only see the 5 of them in the intro.
Come on, Netflix. Get your crap together.
Yeah. What's your number 3, Matt?
So my number 3 became my number 2. So I've got a new number 3 because Fire Drill was my number 2.
Okay.
My number 3 is going to be another soft open. And that was in season 3 when Jim comes in dressed as Dwight.
That's one of my alternates.
I loved the Jim Dwight prank that he did. I wish that would have lasted longer. I mean, they do a callback to it at the very end of the episode,
yeah.
But I wish that they would have extended that longer because it was just hilarious to watch Jim's Dwight impersonation and him feed off of it. And, of course, it gave us one of the most quotable lines that people say from The Office, Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, you're not a fan of The Office if you don't know this scene. It's one of the most popular scenes, and for good reason. Like, it just shows the insaneness the intensity that Dwight can have. It's clear that Jim is just messing with him, but he still can't just let it go.
Yeah, and he tries to like laugh it off, but then he's like, Michael!
Yeah, and then Michael!
And it's funny because they gave Rainn Wilson the same sort of thing later because it's always fun to watch characters play other characters.
Yeah.
So when Jim's manager, they have Rainn Wilson get to do various impersonations of like Dwight, or not, I'm sorry, he always is doing Dwight,
yeah.
Of Stanley and
Meredith.
Toby and Meredith. Yeah. And they calling into David Wallace, and he does great. Like, especially his Toby impersonation, that was just tremendous.
Yeah, Michael did Phyllis and Jim in a different episode.
You already did me. That's what she said.
I was hoping to get one of those in there before you today.
Nope, not this time.
I feel like we were talking about the opening, but I feel like we also have to talk about the ending when Dwight comes in dressed as Jim.
And I love Jim's reaction to it, because Jim is he's like, well, this is great. And so, like, Dwight's trying to get a rise out of him. They're like, hey, Karen, my girlfriend, want to have sex with me because you're my girlfriend? And Jim's like, do you?
Yeah.
She's like, no.
Well, she just like calmly says like, no, I'm good. And Dwight's Jim impression wasn't even that bad.
No, but it was definitely a lot of fun. Oh, and they've done this a bunch, because Andy and Dwight did that too, with the whole Cornell thing. Mm-hmm. And Andy comes in as a beet farmer, and then he can't bite into the beet.
Yeah. Well, and it backfired on Dwight in this episode, because he comes in dressed as Jim, and everyone's just like, Dwight, you look really nice today. You look great. What's different?
No, I don't. I look stupid. Shut up.
Yeah. That is a classic.
All right, hit me with your number 2.
My number 2 is actually a scene where most of the comedy is unseen. It's just audio. You have any idea what I'm talking about?
There's one that I'm thinking of, and I'm not sure. Is that like Holly and Michael in the stairwell? That's only one I'm thinking of where you hear audio and not.
No, I'm talking about season 4, the episode Branch Wars, where Jim is hiding in the car.
Yep.
Michael and Dwight are inside Utica trying to get back at Karen for trying to steal Stanley. And Jim doesn't want to be involved in this at all. He made a deal that he'll go and wear a mustache if they don't destroy anything, I think was the deal, or blow anything up, because Dwight brought stuff to make bombs in the car. They find out halfway there.
Yeah.
So Jim's crouched in the car, listening on a walkie-talkie to Michael and Dwight, who are dressed up like warehouse workers in the Utica branch. And they're talking about finding the copier. And Jim is just like the audience member who you're yelling at the screen, but they can't hear you. Even though they can hear him, they're just ignoring him. It's like, no, don't do anything with the copier. And all of a sudden you just hear the loud crashing.
What makes this great is that when using those walkie-talkies, you get to have a break from what they're hearing or what he's hearing, because you have to have a break in order to communicate.
Yeah.
So he'll click it, and there's silence, and then he unclicks it, and you hear like that it did in fact go as terribly as he was afraid it would.
Yeah, and the different reactions when they hear this loud crash. Dwight's like, "Leave us, just leave us," and Michael's like, "No, don't leave us."
Take Karen back. Make love to her, Jim.
Yeah, climb on top of her and think of Stanley. That's the line.
Man.
Before that happens, they're walking in. Michael and Dwight are walking in, and Michael's just giving him everything. Like, I'm walking up the stairs. I'm breathing heavily. And Jim says, you don't need to be updating me as much as you're updating me. Which is a line I have actually used when babysitting my 6-year-old niece, who tried to tell me, like, hey, look, the dog is standing now. I said, okay, you don't need to be updating me as much as you're updating me. I've stole that line from Jim in this episode.
The line that I use the most from The Office that I found, I even used it tonight, is in Benihana Christmas, when Angela's trying to get people to come to her party. And I can't remember it's to Meredith. And she like says something in typical Angela fashion, and Meredith says, is that a threat? And Angela says, it's an invitation. I do that all the time. Those 2 lines, I always say them.
That's a dad line right there.
It is.
Something I totally forgot about this line. I either forgot about it or didn't hear it until I was listening to this episode last night. As Michael is like presumably pinned under the copier in the stairwell talking to Jim, he says, if I don't make it, host the Dundies.
Man, the Dundies.
And then seeing Karen catch them, and then just that shot of the 3 of them in Karen's office. Jim is just mortified. Like, he's like, I didn't want to be a part of this. And Dwight's there, like, threatening to burn the place down. And Michael is just like, what do you expect? You stole Stanley.
All right, so I'm going to give full disclosure. This episode, not my favorite episode. So this moment wouldn't even make my top 10. I'm sorry. It was fine, but I'm surprised to hear you say it. I know I was watching it with people and they were laughing a lot. And I'm like, this is funny. I don't think it's as funny as you guys think it is.
Yeah, it's all right. Sometimes you can be wrong and it's fine.
Like when I use terrible trivia that's incorrect.
I'll just become everyone's favorite. We're good.
Yeah, that's true. You're already my favorite. All right, so my number 2 is my serious one, and that is the actual wedding of Jim and Dwight. Well, that's a completely different storyline we're creating.
What episode are you watching?
The Jim and Pam wedding. When they turn on the Forever by Chris Brown and they're emulating that YouTube clip, but as they're doing that silliness, it intersplices them actually getting married and the boat on Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
And it was able to, again, it gave you both the camaraderie of The Office and all of their characters, as well as the sweet moment of watching them. What I really love about this moment when it ends too, like, it has made that song be a little bit more special to me, because like I'll hear the song and I'll be like, oh, Jim and Pam. Oh. Yeah. And then it ends with Jim's line where he's like, actually the boat was plan B and the church was plan C. Plan A was marrying her a long time ago. It's like, perfect line. That's how you end that scene.
That's also a really good one. And that kind of like how with Stress Relief, you get to see how everyone reacts to it. It's fun to see all the different Office people, how they come down the aisle in their own very unique ways. That's another part of it. Like Dwight kicking Isabel in the face, and Kevin with his Kleenex shoes, and Andy with a walker.
And Angela just walking.
Yeah. There was no other way for Angela to walk down without breaking character.
Exactly.
Which must be so tough, because Angela Kinsey would eat that up.
Oh, yeah. Angie and I, my wife Angie, we both have kind of like a pet peeve with wedding episodes, because like every wedding episode, they have to create tension because they have to make it last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
They don't ever really let us just have the moment. Sure, this by the end of the episode, we got to have the moment. Same with like things like How I Met Your Mother. You got to have the moment. Or on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you got to have the moment. But there's all of this tension that happens in that. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't like 90% of the rest of the episodes. There's some funny parts in it, but there's a lot of it like just kind of stressing you out, like, because I put myself in that position, and I just like, I would hate if my wedding was this way. And so you feel so bad for these characters that you love, but they at least nailed with the actual ceremony and the actual moments of it. So I do give them props for that.
That's true. Like on the thought of, you mentioned something has to go wrong at weddings. I think the worst example of that has got to be Full House, where Jesse on his wedding day decides to go skydiving and ends up in jail in tomato country. Like, that's not realistic at all.
We've already mentioned Smallville, so I'm just going to bring that back up because I think that's the worst one. Jimmy and Allison's Mac's character, Chloe. Jimmy and Chloe get married, and their wedding is interrupted by Doomsday, who kidnaps Chloe and nearly kills Jimmy and leaves him in needing a hospital. I think that one wins.
Yeah, that sounds worse. But while we're talking about the Jim and Pam wedding, did you see the Some Good News with John Krasinski, where they did a recall to this episode?
I didn't see that specific one. I saw some episodes of Some Good News.
Well, in this one, they actually John Krasinski surprised a couple who had their wedding postponed because of the coronavirus, and all of a sudden they popped up, and Jenna Fisher popped on, and it was like they got their cool Jim and Pam moment, and then they started playing the song, and they had recorded videos of the whole Office cast. Like there was Steve Carell, Phyllis, Angela, everybody dancing in their homes to the song. And it was like a collaboration of the Office characters now dancing to that song.
I do remember seeing that now. I remember seeing the headline. I don't think I even watched the video. I am not a good Office fan, guys. I didn't even watch the video. Shame me.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I saw it without realizing what I was seeing at first. I was just scrolling through TikTok and saw it, and then it played. And then I looked up the rest of the video on YouTube.
Nice. I have this weird thing that if someone's like, hey, you need to watch this video, my heart is like, no, I'm not going to watch it. I like fight watching it. I never ended up watching the What Does a Fox Say video because everyone's like, you got to watch it. I'm like, no, I'm surprised I watched Gangnam Style, to be honest. It's like anything that's viral, I'm like, no, I got to not watch it for some stupid reason.
No one needs to watch What Does the Fox Say.
I'm just using it as an example.
I know. I just needed to get that out there. It's like one of those, NBC, the more you know. No one needs to watch What Does the Fox Say. All right. Do you have anything else about your number two?
I don't. Hit me with number one.
Number one is my emotional one as well. With all of mine, I've been kind of giving you a hint, see if you can guess it. It's a musical moment.
Oh, when they sing to Michael when he leaves?
Yep. 9,986,000 minutes. I've watched that so many times. And I think it's really cool because part of it is, I think that was a real surprise to Steve Carell. I think they pulled it off without him knowing it was happening until they filmed it, if I remember correctly hearing that.
It might have been. I think I remember hearing that.
Yeah, and thinking about it, it's kind of like giving Michael just what he needed. Because, the whole 7 seasons, Michael is lonely. And yeah, he's looking for girlfriends, but really he just needs that sense of family, the sense of like, this is my family, I'm here, this is the people that I want to be with. And he finally gets that with Holly. And then the characters in the office, the rest of the employees kind of acknowledge like, hey, you know what? You maybe have been an annoying boss, but you were part of our lives for 7+ years, depending on how long they were there before the show started. This is a real moment for them.
Yeah. I love what they did with his goodbye, because I really wish they wouldn't have had the B plot with Will Ferrell and Andy. I thought that distracted from the episode. I wish that it would have really been all about Michael and him saying goodbye, because Michael had all these great moments with every single character. Some of them were funny. Like, I love his thing with Oscar, where he gives him like this stupid little thing, and Oscar has to act like he's honored by it. Yeah. And then Michael's just laughing. He's like, he's got the lowest opinion of me of anybody. Yeah. And it was great, because it's just like, he was okay with that role. He didn't need Oscar's appreciation anymore or validation. But like everyone he had something with. But I would say if we were going for emotional moment in the episode, mine is, although this is the next episode, the singing was the episode before. My emotional one was the moment with him and Jim in the office. Like, that was really well done, great acting, and that's probably real tears. I mean, obviously it is real tears, but it's probably real, like, personal tears too. You're saying goodbye to this guy you've been on the show with for 6 years or 7 years.
Yeah, just the whole thing, you can really feel them saying goodbye to Michael. And even in that moment, everybody gets a line in the song, and at first glance you might think, why is like Toby and Angela and Stanley, like, why are they participating in that? But I don't think it's really breaking character for them, because it's kind of like what I said. They know he's leaving, and I think when things are coming to an end, you get a little bit nostalgic, and I could see them going along with it, just part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we said earlier, mob mentality. Even though those guys have bucked mob mentality before, you're saying goodbye. You're doing a kindness. They're not monsters. Like, Stanley and Angela are definitely rough around the edges, but they're not monsters. No. So they're gonna have some common decency every now and then.
Although, if you watch the video when they all stand up and say, remember to call, Angela is definitely out of character. Just saying that. Because if you've seen any bit of Angela outside of the office, she's completely 180 from her character. And she's got the biggest smile on her face. And I don't think Angela Martin, the character, would have gone that far into being super delighted. But it's a small nitpick. But I'd rather have that than have Angela in the middle of everyone smiling be all scowly.
Yeah, exactly. The moment's not about their characters. You let their characterizations go a little bit just to serve the emotional moment.
Yeah. I was trying to look up if there was a behind the scenes reason why they wouldn't have Dwight in that scene. I know he got mad at Michael at Chili's before they were leaving and all that, but I don't know, it just seemed weird to have this big emotional moment saying goodbye to Michael without Dwight.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Didn't remember that was the case.
Mm-hmm. And then another question about this, do you think D'Angelo was in on it, or do you think he just went with it? Did they tell him?
D'Angelo's character would absolutely just go with it.
Exactly. But they start singing, and he's smiling, so I can't tell if he's kind of like, okay, cool, this is fun, or, yeah, I know what's happening. I mean, either it's a 180. I could see it going either way, whether he was in on it or not. And, of course, he starts to do the harmonizing and doing the high solo parts.
That's great. All right, good pick for number one. My number one is actually comedic. So my number one is another one that just had me rolling. It's this long scene that was just tremendous to me, and it is featuring Jim and Dwight again, and it is your birthday scene. Every line in that scene kills me. It's if you guys have seen it before, but Jim and Dwight, they get taken over for the party planning committee, and they have to throw a party for Kelly. And it's like they really exaggerate how bad guys are at planning events for these characters, and especially to have a guy like Dwight having to work with a guy like Jim. At least Jim is like, I'm aware that things need to happen for this, even if I'm not so good at the details. Dwight is just in a league of his own in terms of craziness. So Jim walks into this room, and he's like, I cannot believe how horrible this looks. And Dwight's only blowing up the balloons to like a quarter of their size. The sign for it isn't even like, it is your birthday. It's like, it's a declarative statement.
And they're brown and gray balloons.
It's just like every single thing about it is just the worst possible choice that Dwight could have made, and Jim is just blown up. And it's all in character. It all fits how Dwight would actually think this is how we should do this.
Especially for Kelly. Kelly's the one that would want all the pink frilly stuff and like the attention. Kelly wants all the attention on her, and she wants it to be big and boisterous.
Yeah, I like their phone call later in the episode where he's like, "How old is Kelly?" 37. She is? No, 23. I'm not looking for your best guess.
Or when they bring out the cake, they never really found out if there was an E, if it was Kelley or just Y. And then Jim's like, we got a cake with your name spelled correctly? And Kelly just shakes her head no.
That's really
At least
funny.
Stanley, back in the Christmas Party episode in season 2, got her name right when he got her on the nameplate.
Yeah, hey, look at you. See, you've got this. You are the ultimate Office fan.
Yeah, so I mean, Jim and Dwight couldn't even live up to Stanley.
I would have, for a little bit, what I thought to be the funniest thing that they did, but I didn't include it because it should have gone. I wanted it to go on longer. When they introduce Holly, and Holly's brought over to meet Kevin, that Holly...
I hated that.
I thought that was the funniest thing ever. Every single scene of that, I'm like, this is the funniest crap in the world. He's just, I am gonna bang Holly. She is nice and helpful.
Maybe it's good that we're finally disagreeing on this podcast, but I hated that.
Oh man.
It's up there with Scott's Tots for me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Scott's Tots, every time, for like the first 10 times I watched Scott's Tots, it was always when I was having a terrible day. And like I'd get home and we'd watch The Office, and I'm like, really? It's this episode at the end of a terrible day? And I have to sit through this crap?
But you don't. Why have you watched that 10 times?
Well, I've watched it more than that, because that was just the first 10.
Okay. Well, not okay.
I have to say, there is one good... So here's the problem with Scott's Tots, is the other part of that episode, the B storyline, isn't a positive one either. It's also stressful, because it's the Jim with the Employee of the Month debacle that Dwight set up for him. So neither storyline gives you any sort of respite from it. Both of them are just like, you feel terrible about what's going on screen. The only part of the episode was the soft opening that wasn't like so cringeworthy, and that was Andy's baby talk, which had to find soft opening. It was pretty funny, and it gave us Michael's little Elvis impersonation. Thank you a lot.
Going back to the Jim and Dwight birthday celebration, you know that there's a potential scene of Dwight and Mose celebrating their birthday like that. Like the same decorations, and Mose walks in, thank you, this is my birthday. That is factual.
Well, you see it kind of revisited in a way at his aunt's funeral.
Oh, that's true.
She was 5'7". She owned the farm next to mine. Like, just factual statements. That's how they honor someone.
That's what we would have gotten from The Farm if it got picked up.
Oh, really? Was that supposed to be a spin-off show?
Yeah, that's why the whole episode, aside from the opening, it's just Dwight and Oscar at Dwight's aunt's funeral.
And with the two siblings. Yeah, they definitely it did have that pilot episode feel.
It was what they call a backdoor pilot. They did one in Gilmore Girls with Milo's character that also didn't get picked up, where they just use an episode of the show, introduce a whole bunch of new characters, and they're hoping that you're like, oh, I want to see these characters. Oh, okay, cool, because we're making a new show. I think that's how all the different versions of CSI were spun off from the original CSI, and they've tried it. I think there's probably some success stories, but
there is one for Grey's Anatomy. They did a private practice episode. They did that.
Yeah. In season 9, they thought about spinning off Dwight, but I don't think that show would still be on now if it got picked up.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, Dwight is an annoying character on his own, but his interactions with all the other characters make him a compelling character.
Plus, would Mike Schur still want to be popping in for appearances as Dwight so many years later, or as Mose so many years later?
I don't know. He's become that might have limited his ceiling of success because, as you said at the beginning of the episode, he has gone on to some really awesome projects.
Ooh, I have a really good trivia about the Mike Schur universe. I'm not sure if that's applicable for this or not.
Well, you can go ahead and hit us with your trivia question, whether you want to do that one or a different one, and then I'll give you the second one.
All right, I'll save that one because I feel like we'll probably do other podcasts more about those shows. So mine for The Office, it's not a secret that a lot of the characters in The Office were also writers. But one character in The Office was actually, the actor who played him was the showrunner for a good chunk of the show. Because Greg Daniels created the show and he was the head guy in charge. And then this actor took over for a little while and then Greg Daniels came back at the end. So the question is, what actor from The Office also show ran it for a little while?
I think I know. If I'm wrong, then he's just a writer. But my one also has to do with Greg Daniels because Greg Daniels did get his start in other shows. He probably got big on Saturday Night Live as a writer for that. And then he went on to another long-running TV show. And that show is honored by Easter eggs throughout The Office's tenure. So what show did he write on following Saturday Night Live before he started The Office?
I think I know the answer to yours too, if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if I'm right.
I probably made it a little too easy with a couple too many hints, but that's all right. It's not like we're trying to stump everyone with the hardest questions there are.
If you guys want to email us and tell us the answers to these trivia questions or give us suggestions, tvguyspodcast@gmail.com. You can go ahead and send us an email and we'll see if you're right.
You can follow us on Facebook for TV Guys or follow us on Twitter at TVGuys1. Apparently @TVGuys was taken. I don't know. Don't blame me.
Or blame him. It's fine.
Well, next week, get on your Christmas hats and your Christmas stockings because we're going to talk about the best Christmas episodes. And Brian has got his hat on again. He took off his Santa Claus stuff mid-episode. I don't even know when that happened, but now he's got the hat again.
Yeah, that's the suit is really hot.
Yep, that's fair.
Plus, I've had it since I was in high school, and it's never been washed. So,
well, you've learned a lot about us today, and so if you are as sick of us as I am, then feel free to not listen to another episode, but hopefully you stick around. Subscribe, follow us. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Matt.
And I'm Brian.
We're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.
No one needs to watch What Does the Fox Say?
Ling.
I'm thinking about if I can find a good audio of it, maybe I'll put that audio in there.
Yeah, you can erase my little gling thing then. I give you permission.
Cool.